Let's set the scene. We're in the early days of the Third Caliphate. The massive Muslim empire is at a crossroads. Its legendary second caliph, Umar, is gone, and all the empires it had just conquered, they're watching, just waiting for any sign of weakness. And that moment, it arrived way sooner than anyone thought, and not on some battlefield, but inside an accounting book.
And the threat was real, and it was immediate. 300 Roman warships. That's a massive invasion fleet, and they were heading straight for Egypt. Now, this wasn't just some random province. This was the wealthiest part of the empire, its breadbasket. Losing it would have been catastrophic. So, how did it even get to this point?
Well, believe it or not, the answer comes down to a fascinating clash of leadership styles, really a story of economics versus empathy. This is how a simple argument over taxes spiraled into a foreign invasion and forced an entire empire to choose between its bank account and its own people.
Okay, so to really get how this all went down, we need to meet our two main players. Their completely opposite views on how to run a province are what set the stage for this whole disaster.
On one side, you have the new Caliph Othman. He was a brilliant businessman, and he saw the empire as this single big economic machine that needed to be balanced. His main focus? The central treasury, all the way back in Medina. And on the other side, we have Amr ibn al-As, the guy who actually conquered Egypt. A legendary general, he knew the land, and, more importantly, he really understood the people. His focus was all about keeping Egypt stable and loyal.
So, from Caliph Othman's perspective, sitting back in the capital, the numbers just didn't make sense. Egypt was incredibly wealthy, right? But the tax money coming in seemed way too low. He had a whole empire to fund, and he saw what he thought was a huge untapped resource. So he calls up his governor, Amr, and basically demands to know what's going on.
And Amr replies with this now famous analogy. What he meant was pretty simple. Look, I'm taxing the people of Egypt as much as they can possibly handle. If you ask for any more, you're going to break them. He didn't see the province as just a number in a budget. He saw it as a living, breathing community that had its limits.
But Caliph Othman? He wasn't buying it. As far as he was concerned, this was just an issue of inefficient collection. So he made a really fast, really decisive move. He fired the popular general and governor, Amr, and replaced him with his own cousin, Abdullah bin Saud, with one single instruction: get me more tax revenue.
And right there, a whole new chapter for Egypt began. It was a chapter where the numbers in the treasury went way up, but the loyalty of the people, it just plummeted, and the consequences were absolutely devastating.
You know, at first, the caliph's policy looked like a huge success. The new governor, Abdullah, was just ruthless about it, doubling, even tripling tax collection. The treasury in Medina was overflowing with cash, and Uthman probably felt like his decision was totally justified.
But Amr, who was watching all this from the sidelines, sent another message to the caliph, and this one was much, much darker. The analogy continued: yes, the she-camel is giving more milk, but it's coming at the cost of its babies. While the treasury was filling up, the people of Egypt were suffering. I mean, they were being crushed under these new taxes, and their livelihoods were being destroyed.
And that's when a chain reaction just kicks off. The crushing taxes created deep resentment, and that resentment led the people of Alexandria to do something that was once unthinkable. They sent the secret letter to their old rulers, the Romans, promising to rise up and help them if they invaded. The Romans, seeing a golden opportunity, launched their fleet, and with help from the inside, the great city of Alexandria fell almost overnight.
So now the caliphate is in a full-blown crisis. Its richest province is collapsing, a massive enemy army is on the move, and they're forced to turn to the one man they had just cast aside.
The problem was pretty clear. Abdullah bin Saud was a fantastic tax collector, a great administrator, but he was no general. Facing a huge Roman army and a local rebellion, the Muslim forces in Egypt were totally leaderless and, frankly, terrified. The province, and maybe even the entire empire, was right on the brink of collapse. And in this moment of pure panic, a single message comes from the Muslims in Egypt. And it wasn't just a request, it was a demand. They knew there was only one person the Romans actually feared, only one leader who could rally everybody and win this thing: the man who conquered Egypt in the first place.
Realizing the disaster his policy had caused, Caliph Uthman had no other choice. He had to agree. He reinstated Amr ibn al-As as governor and gave him command of a 15,000-strong army to go take back Egypt. The dismissed general was now the empire's only hope.
So Amr returns to Egypt at the head of this powerful army.
Everyone was expecting an immediate bloody fight. But his first command was something that absolutely no one saw coming.
He ordered his army to wait. Just do nothing. Now, this wasn't cowardice. This was pure genius. See, Umar understood that this war wasn't just about fighting the Romans, it was about winning back the hearts of the Egyptian people. He knew the real reason for the rebellion was the high taxes, not because they loved the Romans. So he decided to just let the Romans be their own worst enemy.
Amr knew exactly what was going to happen. An occupying army needs supplies, right? And the Romans started doing what they'd always done. They looted shops, plundered homes, and they were brutal to the local people. They basically reminded everyone who had invited them in exactly why they had been thrown out before.
And Amr's plan worked like a charm. As the Roman army made its way through the country, their cruelty just turned the Egyptians against them. Pretty soon, the same people who had rebelled against the caliphate were now flocking to join Amr's army. His brilliant strategy turned a hostile population into his greatest weapon. And only then, with a unified Egypt standing behind him, did he finally give the order to attack. After a furious battle, Amr was victorious. The Romans were crushed, and Egypt was saved. But this incredible victory set the stage for one last confrontation, this time between the general and his caliph.
But first, let's just pause and appreciate how huge this moment really was. This victory was so complete that it cemented Muslim control over Egypt for the next 1,000 years. It's a foundational event in the history of the entire region, and it all started with that dispute over taxes.
So, after the war, Caliph Uthman sends Arm an offer. He was basically trying to have his cake and eat it too. He proposed that Arm, the military genius, would stay on as commander of the army, but Abdullah, the efficient administrator, would be brought back as governor in charge of all the finances and taxes.
And Amr's response is just one of the most brilliant and sharp rejections in all of history. He says, "Should I hold the cow's horns while someone else milks it?" With that one question, he not only rejected the offer, but he perfectly summed up his entire philosophy of leadership. You can't separate the burden of protecting the people from the responsibility of governing them fairly. The two things, they're one and the same.
And that leaves us with a question that echoes through history, doesn't it? From ancient empires all the way to modern nations. The story of the Caliph and the general is really a timeless lesson in what it means to lead. It asks us to think about how we measure a nation's true wealth. Is it the gold sitting in the treasury, or is it the loyalty in the hearts of its people?